Yeah, well, I'll say very little.
Okay.
It's setting up.
Okay.
Oh, you need one of these, huh?
I did.
I'm so excited.
Okay. All right, so here's what I have to do. I have to mute this pot here. All right, so we are live on YouTube.
Okay.
I am just putting our meeting up front so that there's no delay between what I was seeing and hearing. So, but we'll just get Ivy squared away here. Hi, Brandy. Let us know if you can hear us okay. Back in 1 second. Okay. This is the microphone. Okay. All right. Got some folks tuning in. Hi, everybody. Okay. And while we let people tune in, I'm going to go over a couple of upcoming things that we have coming up on YouTube here. On Monday, which is tomorrow already, huh? Ask Ivy. It's, everyone's favorite show of the week. So Ivy will be answering your questions. That's at 9 p.m. And the horoscopes will be going up tomorrow in the afternoon. For our upcoming mini classes, the free mini classes that, this is a part of, we have one that we just announced today. It's coming up on Saturday. This is, are you a psychic, medium, or empath? And that's Saturday, the 26th at 9 p.m. That'll be a live Q&A. So if you think you may be psychic, you think you may have mediumistic abilities or be an empath, tune in, ask questions. It'll be great. We also have Speak Up, Your Fear of Speaking Out, and that's on Tuesday, October 6th at 8:30 p.m. So make sure to note that time. We have another one we just announced today too. It's called Anxiety, and this is all about the different forms of anxiety being an intuitive may incur, and that's on Tuesday, October 13th at 8 p.m. And two more that we didn't announce yet, so you're on the ground floor for these. We have Narcissists The Intuitive, which will be Sunday, October 18th at 9 p.m. and Depression on Thursday, October 29th at 8 p.m. In addition to that, we have a numerology class starting this week, and that's really why we're all here. We're here with Danny Johnson, who will be teaching this class. So welcome, Danny. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm so grateful and excited to be able to share this information and relate it to everything I've learned from Ivy so far.
Yeah, this is awesome. Very excited. It's been a while since numerology's been here, right? And answering your questions on the side here is our lovely host, Ivy Rivera.
Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm not feeling so hot today, and so I've decided to stay on the side. From the side over here, I'll be taking your questions, your comments, and I thought it was perfect for Paul to host this free mini class with Danny because Paul is the tarot teacher here at the Ivy League Psychic Academy. Danny is the numerology teacher, and I have found that number patterns between those two arts really seem to cross over quite a lot. So he's really the perfect person to do this free mini class and the interviewing here also.
Yeah, and I'm very, very excited to take the class and ask more questions about the cards entailed here. But so numerology, I don't know how familiar you are with it, but it's the study of numbers. And what we're going to talk about today, there are certain types of people that numbers just flock to them, okay? And they'll see numbers patterns, numbers everywhere. I don't know if you've seen the movie Pi, but he says there's just math everywhere. And this is kind of what they are like. There's birthdays, death days, anything, anytime they look at a clock, they do the numbers there, addresses, everything is, pointed right at them. And that's how they're getting their information. They're numerology people. And others like me and Ivy that are just, doing the mediumship and the psychic abilities. This is part of the language. Okay. So you would think there's, psychic, there's mediumistic abilities, there's astrology, tarot, and numerology is another big pillar in the language. So, you'll start seeing more and more numbers. And it's like, if you didn't see them before, it means you should start paying attention to them now, because they're going to be part of your language and it's time to start learning. And you can start this Thursday, the 24th at 7 p.m. with Danny. So without further ado, let's let Danny talk before I ramble on for too long. Again, welcome, Danny.
Hi, great to be here with you.
And I'm happy you're here. This is so fun. So I have a few questions here. So we'll handle these questions, and then, when if you're watching and you have questions, just fire them away. But maybe they'll be answered. But Ivy will take those, and we'll get to those after we handle the questions here for Danny. So Danny, as we mentioned before, numerology is kind of everywhere. So can you talk about numerology from a historical perspective?
Sure. So numerology has, it seems like from some of the earliest civilizations have offered a sense of order to life. And this goes back to like the ancient Egyptians. This goes, I think it's called the Kemetic numerology with the ancient Egyptians. And even within ancient Egypt, and something we'll get into a little bit later with like in our course, we're going to talk about what numerology meant to the Egyptians, and it really was something very significant. And what's interesting is the connection between ancient Egypt and ancient Greece. And so Pythagoras, the creator of the Pythagorean theorem, Pythagoras himself, there is a connection between Pythagoras and ancient Egypt as well. And Pythagoras was a philosopher and a mathematician, and he found connections between math and the arts and music. So when we see children who are really brilliant in mathematics and who also are in the band, or who love to play some kind of like string instrument, or is a musical in any way, there's a direct connection between mathematics and the arts. And when I think about sometimes artistic programs where there's a lot of, in terms of advocacy for programs that allow for children to be engaged in the arts, there's a reason for it. Very often, sometimes more practical disciplines are sometimes given more respect, but it's just for folks who are very well versed in math and the arts, they see that they're inseparable, which is why you find often folks who are mathematicians, folks who are scientists, who advocate strongly for the arts and for music. So there's a direct connection, and so that history is something that's very significant. And Pythagoras actually provided a blueprint for how we engage in numerology today.
That's so cool. And like you're saying with math and say music, but like the two different parts of your brain, like you're kind of going about it, and then the numbers connect them. It's like the numbers are the language that your brain's using when you don't realize it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really cool. That it's so ancient too. I love that. That's perfect. When did you get into numerology? Like, was that something you'd always seen growing up, or was this a later addition once you started doing mediumship?
So it's interesting how it's like hindsight is 2020. When growing up, I always had an affinity to the science and engineering, and interestingly, I loved physics in high school. Wasn't very good at it, but I loved it, and it fascinated me. And there was something about I didn't do very well in the course, and I ended up switching my major in college from engineering to humanities, which was ended up being much more seamless than I would have anticipated. But that's where my love of numbers came from. I remember being in high school and just feeling the sense of like the order of the universe when reading and studying. And even though not everything made perfect sense to me, it was something that I was drawn to. and then learning about the metaphysical and how Aristotle was a physicist, excuse me, yeah, Aristotle was a philosopher, but then also was a brilliant scientist as well. And so when you find folks in Einstein, who was a brilliant mathematician and a brilliant mind, who was a social justice advocate and a philosopher. So, so to answer your question, sorry, I just get really, I just have such respect for the folks who have appreciation for
right. Very spiritual people. There's no way to separate, numbers from the spirituality. It eventually becomes all one thing. It's a beautiful thing.
It really is. It absolutely is. And when training with Ivy and mediumship, going back to like ancient Greek culture, there was a moment where, and this is where I feel that the numerology was really speaking to me. I felt compelled to watch documentaries on the Oracle of Delphi. And and I just felt spirit telling me, you need to watch, you need to learn more about this. And it was interesting because as I read, but then really watching these documentaries, it showed how folks like Socrates and Plato, folks who questioned everything except the Oracle, And so realizing that, and there are different vibrations that go with different numbers, but 3 being like the Trinity, like divinity, the number 3 is the number for the Oracle of Delphi. And it's just, so it's been a continuous kind of a thing.
That's awesome. And I didn't realize how close our paths were. Growing up, I was very science and math, and like I couldn't understand symbolism at all. And then I was in college and I was a chemistry major and I switched to classics. It was just a complete change. So all this ancient Greek stuff too is fantastic.
Wow. Did you feel like that switch was seamless for you as well?
It was, but it was like, I had just kind of grown to that point. It was weird. It was unexpected and it just worked. That's but awesome. Still love the numbers and math.
We're being told that that it's frozen for some reason.
Looks like it's working on my end.
Okay. I don't know if maybe this is just one person is having an issue.
Maybe.
Not frozen here. Okay. So yeah, somebody's having an issue and posted it, but it's just on there.
Yeah, we look good on YouTube here. So
yeah, I do want to say, I just want to touch a little bit here on how we're talking about like Einstein, and then at the same time we're talking about spiritualism, and we're talking about activists that had a deep history in numerology. And it's so important for everyone to understand that if you're drawn to the psychic language, if you're drawn to mediumship, if you're drawn to tarot or astrology, or, you feel in any way that you've been really drawn to math, this is all connected. And so understanding the language of numerology helps you in that symbol base and to understand what the universe is really saying to you all the time. Mm-hmm. And it spans so far, a lot further than we think.
Yeah, and that's interesting because while you were saying that, I was thinking like people were reading a book and getting really spiritually energized by it. What's to say that someone who is poring over these equations and stuff isn't getting the same lift? They're getting their comfort through this, and that's just how it's. I never made that.
Yeah, mathematicians and whatnot. It's their form of channeling, but it is all an ancient language. It is all really, I think, the same thing that does lead us to a higher level of spiritual evolution. I just do want to say we have a couple comments coming in here, Danny and Paul. We have one from Brandy Kelly saying 911 follows her and her birthday 820 seems to follow her everywhere. Chicken Mama says that the number 4 has followed her entire life, even in odd situations like her kid's birthday or every time she looks at the clock or the time that the kids were born. And so this is something else people need to watch for. Here at the Ivy League Psychic Academy, I talk a lot and in psychic mediumship class about numerology people. For you, it may be part of your language from a past life. And the way you would know that you're one of these people is because all the death dates in your family or your inner circle, your soul group, tend to match with birth dates of other people, numbers on the clock, numbers on the license plates, when you wake up. These things follow you in patterns. Very interesting.
Certainly is. And that's a nice way for us to jump into Danny. What do numbers generally mean?
So numbers carry vibrations with them. Each individual number carries its own vibration, and the numbers tell a story, and the numbers answer questions as well. When, especially for the individuals who describe numbers following them, when we focus on, or especially if we set the intention of or praying and asking for answers to certain questions, they very often will come through the form. They'll come through numbers, as Ivy was saying. So it is an absolutely. I know that numbers are healing. Numbers are comforting. Numbers are kind of in the way, the fact that you're a tarot, like you're a tarot master, like the way that in one of our first classes together, I remember us like learning, and I remember you saying, and it coming through so distinctly for you, how the cards will always repeat themselves. And it's like, if you ask a question, it's kind of interesting how like the same cards will kind of come and emerge and reveal themselves. And the same is true for numbers. Like when folks see a certain time on a clock, or if they wake up at a certain time, or if they're focusing on something that happens with me very often is if I'm focusing and I'm praying and I give it to God and I give it to the ancestors, and all of a sudden my eyes are diverted to the clock and I see a 3:33. Or I see 5:55. And I know that that is a response from the universe. And something that Ivy teaches us is, if you, especially like when from communication from the ancestors, if you think that that is them communicating, it is. And when you're consciously asking for responses and answers, and your gaze is almost, it's impossible to take your eyes off of that phone during that particular moment, those are answers to questions. So they're very healing.
That's an awesome, the way you said that is, if you think it's an answer, it is,
That's right.
A lot of people they want it to be, and then they'll turn it down because they want it. And instead of just taking it for what it is and just not accepting it. That's a fantastic point. I really love that.
We have our astrologer here at the Academy tuning in, Christina Del Rey. And Christina and Danny and Paul and I, we all kind of work really closely together with numbers and astrology and tarot and mediumship, understanding that it's all really one language, just broken down into different areas. So it's good to have Christina on here. She said this is really interesting to listen to. She's enjoying this. And she said that astrology also has critical degrees. Planets are at degrees that are more important than others. Danny, is that something that you've noticed in numerology too?
I have, especially when, if someone is, and we're going to talk about this at some point as well, but when a person is going through something significant, depending upon both their life path, but also possibly like a sub-cycle of what a person is going through, it could very well give an explanation as to the why things are happening. I hope I'm answering that question.
Oh, interesting. Good.
That's good. It's a good segue into this one. It's like you're psychic, Danny. So I know that it's something that comes up a lot in Ivy's shows and Ivy's readings is life contracts. And so what are the connections between life contracts and pinnacle numbers?
So the connection between life contracts and pinnacle numbers are when one of the first things that we learned with Ivy is the significance of life contracts. And life contracts are essentially the work that we promised to do before we got here. And those life contract readings can be so powerful because they indicate not only the work that, like, why things have happened to us, but provide deadlines for us to understand when certain work should be done. Now, the thing with the pinnacle numbers and the life path numbers, with life path numbers, the life path, from what I was reading, kind of indicates the imagine your life as a play, and your life path number is like the plot of the play. Like that is like the theme of the entire play. But then your pinnacle numbers are kind of like the acts, like acts 1, 2, and 3. So especially if there is work, let's say, that needs to be done in, let's say, the second half of your life, or excuse me, second third of your life. So let's say between the ages typically of like 28 to 54, we'll have a different pinnacle number. Like let's say if your life path number is 2, your pinnacle number in your that first cycle could be 4. And then let's say if there's significant work that needs to be done, or if there's like a certain type of energy that you might need to get that work done, the second pinnacle number could be 8, which is associated with like execution and that powerful energy to get things done. And then third pinnacle number could possibly be 7, where, more spiritual work could be required. So it's interesting how, even though we have one constant life path number that is indicative of our entire lifespan, how different numbers can shed light on the type of energy that we will automatically exude and the type of energy that we will have. And it's interesting because when folks look back on themselves at different points in their lives, and it almost might feel like, oh, I feel like a different person now than I was then. And it's true.
Oh, yes.
You are.
Yeah.
And so it gives the pinnacle numbers gives a good indication of how you will show up to fulfill the work that is indicated and laid out in the life contract.
I love how you said that, because I find that this is a big issue among our clients, and all of us talking here today, we're all readers, and I think we all see the same thing. And that is that people just don't often understand what they're supposed to be focusing on at that time in their life, or they don't know what the universe is telling them, or they don't know what the lesson is. And so they get stuck in this pattern, this cycle of really being overly logical and trying to figure it out. And to just listen to those numbers can show you everything. This is exactly what you're supposed to be learning. This is the growth that you're supposed to be focusing on. Let's wrap up the show and move on to something else,
Mm-hmm.
And it's something we should all really know.
Absolutely.
I wonder if both my chat and Danny's chat would have that different change right when we were in college, and it shifted to completely different majors, a whole different, path in life right there,
Well, yeah, like we were just talking about pivotal points in the life contracts that I do. Danny's talking about pinnacle years. Christina Del Rey talking about astrology in these key years. Yeah, there's usually a major shift in like career, your life focus, your relationships, and we get these several times, but not all the time. And that's why people need to understand this and maximize the opportunities that we do have. It's not an endless supply. It is a few key marking points throughout an entire life. So we have a couple more comments coming in here. A few people said, oh my God, 5 is following me all the time. A few other people mentioned some other number patterns that seem to be following them at different times. Maureen Pucci says 8 is her life path number. So that's interesting. Life path numbers.
Yeah. Danny, can you go on? Is that what you were saying about the numbers that you said, that if you're born and that's your number, that's your plot? Is that a life path number?
Exactly. Yep. The life path number, that is the theme throughout her entire life. So that's interesting how 8 is her life path number, where 8 represents that energy. So I was reading that like Oprah Winfrey has a life path number of 8. So folks who are able to take their dreams and actualize them. No wonder. No wonder. That makes so much sense as to why, like, you are able, I watch you being able to take something and learn it and be able to apply it in such like amazing ways. Like, you've given me incredible ratings. So that makes so much sense. Wow. So yeah, so that's absolutely it.
And I know that's something that you'll be talking about in the class curriculum. We'll get into that in just a second here. I want to sort of break down what will be coming up, but we do have a question here from Christina Del Rey. She wants to know, she said, astrology simplified. If someone's going through a divorce or something major like that, Danny, do you think that'll show up in the numbers somewhere?
It absolutely will, especially when it comes to, but it could potentially be with pinnacle numbers, but definitely with the names. And especially because when, depending upon what a person might be called to focus on at different points in their lives, that might show up in terms of numerology. Plus, there's something called like challenge numbers. So those challenge numbers could also very similar, kind of like similar to like the time frames of like the time frame between like the first, second, and third pinnacle cycles of our lives. Challenge numbers are also lessons that we learn in life as well. So that could show up there as well. And interestingly, when it comes to a person, anyone who might get married or get divorced, and if there's a name change associated with that, that is definitely will show up in the numbers.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, all this talk of names, Danny. So the significance of one's name in numerology, it seems to be very important.
It is. So there are numbers associated with each consonant and vowel, and a person's entire name, when calculating what their it's called an expression number is based off of their name. And so when reading about these expression numbers, especially as they're associated with names, it made me really think back to when folks, and not to make things about gender, but typically when women get married and they make the decision, am I going to change my name or not? And very often I think that comes down to a concept of like individuality and wanting to keep one's, a sense of oneself. But their expression number changes when they get married. Like if they change their name, their expression number will absolutely change. And that expression number goes along with talent and how a person might show up and how a person might present themselves automatically. And so when we see folks who get married and who change their name and change their name back, and it's almost like when you see a person who may have like a new lease on life and like they're like a new version of themselves, it's because their expression number has changed. And it is something definitely, I think, that for any person who might choose to change their name, just to keep in mind, because that will definitely have an impact. The universe will yield.
Or to focus on a better way of picking a name for your child or your pet. It's serious. Exactly. Yeah. Very important. Really
there was a mayor in Rhode Island. They were running the race. He was Frank Russo, but there's also another Frank Russo. So he changed his name to Frank A. Russo legally. So he was the first guy on the ballot. People would just go there. And then so the other guy changed his name to Frank A. Russo. And
wow.
So, well, you get higher up the ballot. Like, are they screwing up their lives numerologically here? I don't know. You get
right.
You get up
exactly.
On the yeah. I wonder what else happened to them.
That is interesting. Yeah, I wonder if if they had if that particular subcycle they had like the number associated, like the energetic vibrational number that they needed to get their work done, but then they changed their name, and all of a sudden.
I'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. This is great stuff, Danny. I'm very, very excited for this class. So what can we expect from this class?
So what we can expect is for us to learn about and discuss our life path number, and we will have the chance to have a life contract and an abbreviated life contract reading that will associate with the three subcycles and the three subcycle, three pinnacle numbers, as well as those challenge numbers. So we can, we'll be able to discuss what are some of the talents and some of the gifts that we are given in each third of our lives, as well as what lessons are we meant to learn. And it's like when we kind of have an understanding of the lessons we're meant to learn, especially as they associated with different numbers, it allows to give ourselves grace and to breathe a little bit and to know that there is a divine order to everything that's happening. And that especially because with life contract and with our life path, it is about, learning lessons. It's something that Ivy teaches us all the time. So that's something that we're going to be able to do, as well as to talk about expression numbers and the historical aspect of numerology. We're going to go much more in depth into that. And we are going to, and we'll save this for class, but we're going to delve into what numbers mean to us individually. And we're gonna have some ways of being able to identify that.
That's awesome. So people they'll not only just learn numerology and how it works, but they'll also get their own personal chart and like how the numbers affect them, and so they see it like firsthand and everything. Really, that's
Exactly.
Awesome. I can't wait. This is going to be an awesome class.
It is. And it's 4 weeks. So we've broken it down into like 2 hours, per week. And I love the way that you set it up, Danny, just so that they're able to walk away and really understand this and apply it to their lives every day from there on forward. I do want to ask Danny a question here. What would you recommend people pay the most attention to where numbers are concerned? Like if you were to say, oh, wow, when this happens and I see numbers like this, I really know to pay attention, because you have any advice for them?
Yeah, so I would say when numbers are repeated, especially like when you see like a 333 or a 555, that means that there is, especially if a person's been asking questions or has been kind of like focusing or meditating on something, that is like the universe's way of emphasizing the response, especially with the meaning of that number. Also, when numbers come through, when we're going through especially a transition, the numbers seem to not just follow us, but they show up at really, I think, vulnerable moments. So at moments where, not like necessarily we're at our wits' end, but at moments where it's just, okay, I just don't know what is happening, the number will appear. And I've had numbers appear both in terms of from when speaking with folks on my telephone, if when speaking with someone and they share something and that particular number comes through, it's like the ancestors and our guides, I feel, will tap when we're supposed to pay attention to that number as well. So I do feel like it's also an individual thing too. The number, it is a language, and how the numbers introduce themselves to us is on an individual basis as well, but it also depends on, I think, the scenario too. I think it's just something you asked about. If it's something career-wise, it will come through. It could be potentially in a career setting, or it could be if a person is thinking about changing a career, changing careers, so going back to school or doing something different, the numbers will emerge and you'll see like the same number coming through over and over again. And
I love that. It's so funny that that's how you answered. When you see patterns in numbers, 555, 333, 111, and you just asked a question. You ask a question, you say a prayer, you're trying to manifest something, you're asking for an answer, and here come these patterns. It was just funny that you said it that way, because that was primarily what all the comments were. Like everybody that I didn't talk about had literally said that. So there you go, people. Okay, from the horse's mouth here. Now, also, I like how you said vulnerable moments, or times of change. Just because even if we're not vulnerable, we feel like we are. Humans just don't like change. And so we will see the numbers kicking up in patterns to give us that validation, and that's a beautiful thing. And I thought it was funny too that you said it was personal, because I was just going to comment for my own self on how I noticed that my spirit guides, my ancestors will give me, or like this is a big part of angel communication. Angels are the biggest, entities in the universe to use the number system. So whenever I'm going through something, I'll see ivy leaves or my lucky number 24. And that's very personal. and it's a heads up. Like, you don't have to know the whole language to understand that it's reassurance,
Absolutely.
That's a beautiful thing. We do have a question here from a Brandy. I don't know if this is the kind of answer you're saving for the actual 4-week course, or if you can answer this now, but how would you describe a 4 life path?
So a 4 life path, we're definitely going to we're going to get into that a little bit more as when we get into the course.
Gotcha.
But just from a general perspective, a life path 4 is a person who is called to use who are very detail oriented, and who are also very pragmatic, and who are very, I want to see the word logical, but very practical in the way that you, Brandy, the way that you would approach life in different ways, depending upon what circumstances might be there. Approaching things from a practical perspective is something that's going to be probably a common theme, or may have been a common theme for you. That does not mean that you cannot and are not using like your intuitive sense, because like Ivy tells us all the time that not a person walking the earth can survive without using her intuition. So depending upon what your subcycles are and your pinnacle numbers are, that might indicate where spirit might be coming in as well, either more strongly or where that might be for you. But it just means that in order for you to be at your best, it sounds like using a very pragmatic, practical way of approaching life as something that's going to be a constant for you.
I love that.
Love it, yeah.
Yeah, and then Christina Del Rey had said that she's a 7.
She's a 7.
Oh, that makes sense.
And why is that? Why does that make sense?
Oh, that makes so much sense. The 7 is number for spirituality and occult wisdom. And it's interesting because the 7 and 9 are both very spiritual numbers, but 7 is that number for internal introspection. That's that number where one would go inward to sit with and
there you go.
With that energy.
Christina Del Rey, our astrologer.
Yeah,
and Danny, what is your number?
I'm a 1.
You're a 1. Okay.
Life path number 1. And like individuality, like leadership, initiative, those type of characteristics come with the number 1.
With the triple Leo, huh?
Christina, God bless her heart. She said, "Oh, girl, you're a fiery woman."
I love it. Well, you're really the perfect one to be teaching this then. That sounds great. Paul, I don't know, do you have any other questions for her?
No, this was awesome, Danny. Thank you so much. And just to repeat for everybody, class starts Thursday. This Thursday, it's 4 weeks. It's at 7 p.m. and you can register at ivyrivera.psychicmedium.com. We look forward to having you. And as we mentioned before, it's one of the pillars of this language here, and a couple of the others we have starting up this month as well, or next month. Psychic mediumship course starts on October 7th. That's mind-blowing course and it's recommended to everybody. And you can take these all at the same time too, so don't be ashamed. And then there is Intuitive Tarot starting on October 20th, and that's those are Tuesdays. Danny's class is Thursdays. Ivy's class is Wednesdays. So we hope to see you all 3 days.
Danny, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
I just am grateful for the chance to be able to engage in conversations and share what Spirit has it feels like has downloaded, and it feels like into me and to other folks as well. And I look forward to walking the journey with everyone who might join our class.
So exciting. And of course, we are doing this through Zoom, but it will be limited seating. So make sure you register now. So yeah, Tarot with Paul, mediumship with me, astrology with Christina Del Rey, and numerology with Miss Danny Johnson here.
Oh.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. So good to have you, Danny. Paul, thanks.
Oh, thank you both so much. I'm just grateful for the chance just to be a part of things.
So am I.
It's going to be fantastic.
It's awesome.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you tomorrow for Ask Ivy right here on YouTube.
Wonderful.